Maria was a simple woman who never liked to draw too much attention to herself. Every morning she dressed in plain, clean clothes that were neat but never fancy. She didn't wear expensive jewelry, and she often carried the same old handbag she had used for years. She drove to work in a small car that was a little older than the shiny vehicles most of her colleagues drove. To many people in her company, Maria looked like an ordinary employee, someone who could easily be ignored. But behind her calm smile and gentle nature, Maria carried secrets that no one in the office could have ever imagined. At the company where she worked, the culture was competitive and sometimes harsh. People judged each other quickly, and appearances seemed to matter more than kindness or hard work. Maria had been working there for only a few months, and though she was always polite, friendly, and ready to help, most of her co-workers hardly noticed her. Some even laughed at her simple way of living. In the cafeteria, she often sat at a corner table with her homemade lunch, while others bragged loudly about their expensive restaurant meals. Many whispered about her behind her back, thinking she wasn't good enough to be part of their group. One afternoon, while Maria quietly ate her sandwich, a group of colleagues sat nearby. They started laughing and talking loudly. "Look at her old car in the parking lot," one of them said with a smirk. "I wonder if it even starts on cold mornings." Another added, "She wears the same shoes every day. Maybe she can't afford a new pair." They all burst out laughing while Maria kept her eyes on her food. She didn't respond, didn't argue, and didn't show anger. She simply smiled softly, as if their words had no power over her. But deep inside, she felt the sting of their cruelty. Still, she chose silence, because Maria knew something they did not. The truth was, Maria had recently become the owner of the very company where she worked. Through a private investment deal, she had bought the majority of the company's shares. But instead of revealing this immediately, she wanted to experience how people treated her when they thought she was just another simple employee. She wanted to see the real character of her co-workers before she made her true identity known. Every unkind word and every mocking laugh only gave her more insight into the people around her. And every small act of kindness, though rare, also stood out to her as something precious. One day during a team meeting, Maria suggested an idea to solve a problem the department had been facing for weeks. It was a thoughtful suggestion that could save the company both time and money. But before she could finish explaining, her manager interrupted her with a dismissive tone. "Thank you, Maria, but let's hear from someone else." The room moved on quickly, as if she had said nothing important. A few people snickered quietly, and Maria could feel their eyes judging her again. She sat back in her chair, her expression calm, but her heart carried both sadness and quiet determination. In the evenings, when Maria returned home, she lived a completely different life. Her house was beautiful and filled with warmth. She didn't flaunt her wealth, but she had worked hard in the past, made wise investments, and eventually reached a point where she could afford anything she wanted. Yet, Maria's heart was humble. She believed in treating people equally, no matter how much money they had or what position they held. That's why she continued to dress simply and live quietly even after becoming wealthy. She believed that true respect should never come from money but from kindness and character. This belief was the reason she was testing the company by working in it undercover. As weeks passed, Maria's co-workers continued their behavior. They invited each other to lunches and parties but never included her. They rolled their eyes when she walked by, and some whispered unkind nicknames. Despite this, Maria continued to show up every day with the same gentle smile. She completed her tasks with care, helped colleagues who needed assistance, and never raised her voice in anger. To an outsider, it may have seemed like Maria was weak or timid. But in reality, she was observing, learning, and patiently waiting for the right moment. She knew that very soon, everything would change, and the people who judged her would see her in a way they had never expected. Maria's patience and inner strength made her story different from the others in that office. While they rushed to climb ladders through arrogance and gossip, she was preparing to climb in silence through wisdom and grace. Every small insult she received was like a note in her mental journal, reminding her of who truly respected people and who only respected wealth. The office bullies had no idea that the woman they laughed at for her old car was actually the one who held the future of their jobs in her hands. The cafeteria whispers, the ignored ideas, and the cold shoulders were all part of a bigger picture Maria was quietly painting. But Maria was not thinking about revenge. She didn't want to humiliate anyone. What she wanted was to teach them a lesson about respect, kindness, and humility. She wanted them to understand that greatness does not always wear fancy clothes or drive luxury cars. Sometimes, greatness sits quietly in the corner with a homemade lunch and listens while others laugh. Maria believed that real change could only happen when people learned to value the simple qualities of humanity, respect, honesty, and compassion. So she endured the whispers and the laughter, knowing that soon the truth would shine brighter than any rumor. Soon, the same people who mocked her would sit in shock as they realized who she really was. And soon, Maria would stand before them not as the simple woman they thought she was, but as the new owner who had the power to shape the future of their company and their lives. Maria walked into the office the next morning with her usual calm expression. She wore her neat blue blouse and carried her simple bag, the same one her co-workers often made fun of. As she sat down at her desk, she could already hear the whispers around her. People thought she didn't notice, but she did. She heard the laughter, the quiet comments, and the way some people looked at her as if she did not belong. What they didn't know was that she carried something far more powerful than fancy clothes or a shiny car. She carried dignity, patience, and a secret that would soon change everything. The bullying grew more obvious with time. A group of colleagues often mocked her when she walked past. Sometimes they pretended not to hear her when she spoke, and sometimes they made fun of her in meetings. One day, Maria walked into the cafeteria with her little lunchbox. She sat at her usual corner table and carefully unwrapped her sandwich. Across the room, a group of her co-workers watched her and started laughing. "There she goes again with that homemade food," one of them said. "Maybe she doesn't even know what a real restaurant looks like." Another added, "I heard she still lives in a small apartment. How can she even afford to work here?" Their laughter grew louder, and Maria quietly took a sip of water. She didn't argue, didn't complain, and didn't show anger. Instead, she looked out the window and let their voices fade into the background. Deep inside, she knew she was not the weak one in the room they were. Her manager was no better. During team discussions, whenever Maria tried to share an idea, the manager brushed her aside. "Let's move on," he often said, ignoring her input as if it held no value. But the truth was that Maria's ideas were often more creative and practical than most of the team's suggestions. Once, she had prepared a detailed plan to help a struggling project. She stayed up late working on it, believing it would help the company. But when she presented it, her manager hardly looked at her notes. He gave her a short nod and then turned to another employee, asking for their thoughts instead. Maria felt invisible, but she reminded herself why she was there. She wanted to see the truth of how people treated someone they thought was ordinary. Some days were especially painful. Maria overheard cruel nicknames people gave her. They called her old bag because of her handbag and cheap car because of the vehicle she drove. One day, when she entered the parking lot, she saw a few co-workers standing near her car, laughing and pointing at it. One of them even joked, "If this thing breaks down, maybe we should all pitch in to buy her a bus pass." Maria quietly unlocked her car, got in, and drove away without saying a word. Her silence was not weakness, it was her strength. She knew her moment was coming, and their words would soon come back to haunt them. But not everyone in the office was cruel. There were a few kind souls who treated Maria with respect. A young intern once asked her for advice, and Maria patiently guided him through a complicated task. Another employee, who rarely spoke to anyone, thanked Maria for helping her when she struggled with computer issues. These small moments warmed Maria's heart. They reminded her that kindness still existed, even in a place where pride and arrogance often ruled. Maria noted these moments carefully, just as she noted the unkindness. She remembered who treated her with respect when they thought she was nobody. At night, when Maria returned to her peaceful home, she reflected on the day. She looked around her spacious living room, her shelves filled with books, and the quiet garden outside her window. This was the world her co-workers could not see. They didn't know she was wealthy, that she had investments across the city, and that she had recently purchased the very company where they all worked. She thought about how differently people acted when they thought someone had nothing to offer. They judged quickly, laughed easily, and showed their true hearts without realizing it. Maria knew she had made the right choice by staying undercover. Now she understood who her real allies were and who only cared about power and appearances. The bullying, however, did not stop. During one project meeting, Maria suggested a simple change that would save both time and money. Before she could finish, one of her colleagues interrupted with a laugh. "Why don't we let the experts talk? Maybe Maria should just handle the coffee runs." The room chuckled, and Maria's face grew warm, but she did not lose her composure. She folded her hands gently on the table and let the laughter pass. She reminded herself again, they had no idea who they were mocking. They had no idea she was the very person who signed their paychecks. They had no idea that the simple woman in front of them was actually their new owner. As the weeks went by, the company prepared for a major event. Rumors spread that the ownership of the company had changed. People whispered in hallways about a powerful new owner who would soon be revealed. Some said it would be a rich businessman. Others thought it might be a glamorous investor from abroad. The staff buzzed with excitement, imagining someone walking in with expensive clothes and a commanding voice. No one, not even for a second, guessed that the new owner was Maria, the same woman they mocked daily for her shoes, her car, and her lunchbox. Maria listened quietly to their conversations. She heard them discussing who the mysterious owner could be. Some hoped for a boss who would give promotions, others worried about job cuts. A few even joked, "Whoever it is, they better not be as boring as Maria." She smiled faintly at their words. She knew their world was about to turn upside down. Very soon, the truth would come out, and the laughter would stop. The same people who made fun of her would sit in stunned silence, realizing they had judged her without ever knowing her story. At this point, Maria's heart was calm. She wasn't thinking about revenge. She wasn't planning to embarrass anyone in public. Instead, she wanted to open their eyes. She wanted to show them that humility is not weakness and that judging others based on appearances is dangerous. She wanted to lead with kindness but also with firmness. She wanted to remind them that respect should be given to everyone, not just to those who wear expensive clothes or drive expensive cars. And so, as the day of the announcement grew closer, Maria waited patiently. She carried her same simple bag, drove her same old car, and wore her same calm smile. Her co-workers continued to gossip, mock, and underestimate her. But in just a few days, the tables would turn. The woman they laughed at would soon stand on stage as their leader. The same people who ignored her voice in meetings would soon listen to every word she said. The quiet, simple woman was about to change the story forever, and none of them were ready for the shock that was coming. The big day finally arrived. The company had been buzzing with excitement for weeks about the official announcement of its new owner. Posters were placed around the office, and the management sent out emails inviting all employees to gather in the conference hall at noon. People whispered in the hallways, speculating who the mysterious owner might be. Some believed it would be a famous businessman, others thought it could be a glamorous investor from another country. A few even joked about how powerful the person must be to buy such a big company. Nobody, not even for a second, thought it could be Maria, the woman they had mocked and ignored every single day. That morning, Maria arrived at work just like always. She wore her plain white blouse and her comfortable shoes. She carried her small bag and walked quietly to her desk. As usual, a few co-workers smirked when they saw her. One whispered to another, "Can you imagine if she was the new owner?" That would be the biggest joke ever. They both laughed, not realizing the truth in their words. Maria smiled faintly and sat down, checking her notes for the meeting. Inside her heart, she felt a mix of calmness and anticipation. The secret she had carried for so long was finally about to be revealed. By noon, the entire office had gathered in the large conference hall. The atmosphere was filled with energy. Employees straightened their clothes, managers adjusted their ties, and everyone sat eagerly waiting for the big reveal. The stage was decorated with banners, and a microphone stood in the center. The CEO, who had been running the company temporarily, stepped onto the stage. He smiled proudly as he looked out at the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "thank you for joining us today. As you all know, our company has recently undergone a major change. Today, it is my honor to introduce you to the new majority owner of this company." The room grew silent. People leaned forward in their seats, their eyes wide with curiosity. The CEO continued, "This person is not only wise and capable but also someone who believes in the future of this company. Please give a warm welcome to Maria." For a moment, the room was completely still. Then gasps filled the air. Heads turned quickly toward the back of the hall, where Maria was seated quietly. She stood up slowly, her hands clasped together, and began walking toward the stage. Her colleagues stared in shock, their mouths open, their eyes filled with disbelief. Some rubbed their eyes as if they could not believe what they were seeing. The woman they laughed at for her old car, the woman they ignored in meetings, the woman they mocked for her simple clothes, she was the new owner. Maria walked gracefully to the stage. The sound of her footsteps echoed in the silent hall. Every eye was on her. She climbed the steps and stood at the microphone. For a moment, she looked out at the crowd, the same faces that once turned away from her, the same people who thought she was invisible. Now they sat frozen, unable to hide their shame. Maria took a deep breath and began to speak. Her voice was calm, steady, and strong. "Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it is true. I am the new owner of this company." A ripple of murmurs spread across the hall. Some people lowered their heads, embarrassed by how they had treated her. Others looked at each other in shock, unable to find the words. Maria raised her hand gently, asking for silence. "I know many of you are surprised," she said softly. "Some of you may even feel confused. For months, I have been working alongside you as a regular employee. Many of you did not notice me. Some of you even judged me. But I chose to remain simple, to see how people behave when they think no one important is watching." Her words struck deeply in the hearts of many. People shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The group who used to mock her lunchbox stared at the floor. The ones who laughed at her old car avoided her eyes. The manager who dismissed her ideas suddenly looked very small in his chair. Maria continued, "I have seen laughter, I have heard whispers, and I have felt the coldness of being treated as if I did not matter. But I have also seen kindness. A few of you treated me with respect, even when you thought I was just another worker. To those people, I am truly grateful." The room was quiet, but the silence was heavy with emotions: guilt, regret, and realization. Maria spoke again, her tone warm but firm. "I did not buy this company to show off wealth or power. I bought it because I believe in its potential. But more importantly, I believe in the people who work here. This company can only succeed if we learn to respect each other, no matter how someone looks, no matter what car they drive, and no matter what clothes they wear." Her words echoed through the hall like a lesson carved into stone. The employees who once thought they were superior now felt smaller than ever. They realized how shallow their judgments had been. The same simple woman they laughed at had just become their leader. Maria looked around once more and added, "From today, things will change. I will not allow bullying, mockery, or disrespect in this workplace. Every person here deserves to be treated with dignity. We will build this company together, not by stepping on each other, but by lifting each other up. Applause slowly began, first from the few kind employees who had always respected her, then spreading across the room. Soon the hall was filled with clapping, though some hands trembled with guilt. People who once ignored her now looked at her with admiration, though their eyes still carried the shame of their past actions. Maria accepted the applause with a humble nod. She was not seeking revenge, nor was she proud in a selfish way. She was there to lead not with arrogance, but with wisdom. As the meeting ended, Maria stepped down from the stage. People rushed to congratulate her, though many struggled to find the right words. Some stuttered apologies, while others simply looked at her with respect they had never shown before. Maria smiled at each of them, forgiving in her heart but never forgetting what she had learned. She knew who was genuine and who was only pretending. Her test had shown her the true character of those around her. Later that afternoon, as Maria walked through the office, the atmosphere was completely different. No one whispered behind her back. No one laughed at her clothes. People greeted her politely, some even nervously. The same colleagues who once made fun of her now stood aside respectfully when she passed. Her manager, who used to dismiss her ideas, came up to her and said, "Maria. Ma'am. I just want to say congratulations." Maria gave him a gentle smile and replied, "Thank you. And please, just call me Maria." That night, when she returned home, Maria felt a deep peace in her heart. She thought about the journey she had taken, the insults she had endured, the laughter she had ignored, the whispers she had heard. All of it had led to this moment. She didn't feel anger toward anyone. Instead, she felt grateful for the lesson life had given her. She had shown everyone that true worth is not measured by appearances. And she had reminded herself that humility, patience, and dignity will always shine brighter than arrogance. The next chapter of her life had begun, and so had the next chapter of the company. From that day forward, nothing would ever be the same. Maria returned to the office the next morning with a different atmosphere surrounding her. The same hallways that once echoed with whispers and laughter now filled with silence when she walked through. People who once turned their backs now stood up straight, greeted her with nervous smiles, and avoided meeting her eyes too long. It was as if overnight, the simple woman they mocked had become someone untouchable. But Maria did not let the sudden change in their behavior affect her. She walked calmly, just as she always did, her expression soft and composed. She wasn't here to enjoy fear or false respect. She was here to bring real change. That afternoon, Maria called for another meeting in the conference hall. This time, the employees walked in quietly, their usual chatter gone. No one dared make a joke. No one rolled their eyes. They all sat down with their hands folded, waiting for her to speak. Maria entered the hall slowly and stood at the same microphone where she had revealed her true identity just a day earlier. She looked around the room, her eyes meeting those of her co-workers, some guilty, some curious, and some hopeful. She cleared her throat gently and began. "Yesterday," Maria said, her voice calm yet powerful, "you learned something that surprised you. You learned that I am not just another worker but the new owner of this company. I know that for many of you, this was a shock. For some, it may have even been uncomfortable. But today, I want to talk about something even more important than ownership. I want to talk about respect." The room was still, and every word seemed to sink deep into the hearts of those listening. Maria continued, "I have been in this company long enough to see the way people treat each other. I have heard the laughter, the gossip, and the insults. I have seen people ignored, overlooked, and made to feel small. And I have experienced it myself. Some of you judged me based on my clothes, my car, or my lunchbox. Some of you decided I was not important. But let me ask you this, if I had not been the owner, would that have made it right to treat me that way?" No one answered. The silence in the room was heavy. Heads lowered, and eyes looked at the floor. Maria paused, letting the moment linger, before speaking again. "The answer is no. It is never right to treat anyone with disrespect, no matter who they are or what they have. A workplace should be a place of dignity. It should be a place where people feel safe, valued, and respected. Without that, no company can succeed, no matter how much money it makes. She then straightened her back and spoke with more firmness. That is why, starting today, there will be new policies in this company. Bullying, mocking, or gossiping about others will not be tolerated. If anyone is caught disrespecting a coworker, there will be consequences. From now on, every person in this company must treat each other with kindness, fairness, and dignity. A murmur spread through the crowd. People exchanged glances, some nodding in agreement, others shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Maria raised her hand gently to regain silence. I know change is not easy, she continued. Some of you may not like these rules. But I believe they are necessary. Because a company is not built on titles or money, it is built on people. And if we cannot treat people with respect, then we have already failed. She looked directly at the manager who had often dismissed her ideas. Leaders in this company, Maria said firmly, will be held to an even higher standard. A leader is not someone who simply gives orders. A true leader listens, guides, and values the people who work under them. From now on, every manager must show respect to their teams. No more ignoring ideas. No more favoritism. Every voice matters. The manager shifted nervously in his chair, his face red with shame. He knew her words were meant for him. Others in the room also looked uneasy, remembering the times they had joined in mocking Maria or others. Maria, however, did not speak with bitterness. Her tone was clear but gentle, strong but not cruel. She then smiled softly and said, "But this is not just about rules. This is about creating a culture of kindness. I want this company to be a place where people feel proud to work. A place where no one is afraid to speak up. A place where every worker knows they are valued. That will be our new beginning. And I promise you, if we work together in this spirit, we will grow stronger than ever before." The hall erupted in applause. It started with a few claps, but soon everyone joined in. This time, the applause was not forced or nervous, it was genuine. People realized that Maria was not only their new owner but also a leader who truly cared. She wasn't interested in wealth or power for its own sake. She wanted to build something meaningful, something lasting. After the meeting, employees slowly approached her. Some came with apologies, their voices trembling as they admitted their mistakes. "Maria, I am sorry for the way I treated you," one said softly. Another added, "I judged you unfairly. Please forgive me." Maria listened patiently, nodded kindly, and said, "I forgive you. But remember, forgiveness is only real when followed by change." Her words were gentle, but they carried deep meaning. That week, the changes Maria promised began to take shape. Posters were placed around the office with the words, "Respect, kindness, dignity." A new policy was introduced where employees could share ideas openly, and managers were required to listen and respond thoughtfully. A small committee was formed to make sure workplace behavior remained respectful. Slowly, the atmosphere began to shift. The cafeteria, once filled with whispers and laughter at someone else's expense, now carried lighter, kinder conversations. The same people who once mocked Maria's homemade lunch now sat beside her, sharing their meals and listening to her stories. But Maria did not allow false respect to blind her. She paid close attention to who was genuinely changing and who was only pretending. Some people truly became kinder, realizing the mistakes they had made. Others struggled to adjust, still carrying arrogance in their hearts. Maria knew real change would take time, but she was patient. She believed in giving people the chance to grow. As days passed, employees noticed something unusual. Productivity increased. People worked together more smoothly. Projects that once dragged on now moved forward quickly. The company began to feel less like a battlefield and more like a community. For the first time, many employees felt proud to walk into the office. They began to see Maria not just as their owner but as their example. One afternoon, as Maria walked past the parking lot, she noticed something small but meaningful. A few employees stood near her old car. But this time, they weren't laughing. Instead, they were talking about how they admired her for staying humble, even when she could have bought the most expensive car in the city. "She doesn't need to prove anything to anyone," one of them said. "That's real strength." Maria smiled quietly to herself as she got into her car. The very thing they once mocked had now become something they respected. Maria's vision for the company was slowly becoming reality. Respect was no longer just a word, it was becoming a way of life inside the office. And though some still carried guilt for how they had treated her, Maria never held it against them. She believed people could change, and she gave them the space to do so. But she also never forgot the lesson she wanted them to learn: appearances can deceive, and judging others without knowing their story can lead to regret. She had shown them this truth not with anger, but with patience and wisdom. And now, the company stood stronger because of it. Maria woke up early on a Monday morning, the sun casting a warm glow across her quiet garden. She sat by the window with a cup of tea and thought about how much had changed in just a few weeks. The office that once felt cold and unfriendly was slowly becoming a place of kindness and teamwork. She remembered the first days when she was laughed at, ignored, and treated as if she didn't belong. And now, those same hallways were filled with greetings, smiles, and respect. Maria knew the journey wasn't over yet, but she felt proud of the transformation that was unfolding. When she arrived at the office that day, she noticed small but powerful signs of change. In the cafeteria, employees no longer sat in divided groups, leaving others out. Instead, she saw people sharing tables, laughing together, and even inviting her to join their conversations. A young intern who once felt nervous to speak now confidently discussed his ideas with senior staff. Maria smiled at this. It was exactly what she had hoped for, a culture where every voice mattered. Her presence carried weight now, but not because she demanded it. People respected her because they saw how she lived her values. She still drove her old car, still carried her simple bag, and still brought her homemade lunch. These things had not changed. What had changed was the way people looked at them. Where they once saw weakness, they now saw strength. Where they once saw something to mock, they now saw a reminder that dignity was far more important than appearances. That afternoon, Maria gathered her leadership team for an important meeting. She wanted to discuss the company's future and the kind of workplace she envisioned. The managers sat nervously, still adjusting to their new reality. Maria began, "We are at a turning point. This company will not only be known for its products or profits but also for its culture. I want us to be remembered as a place where people are respected, where kindness is a strength, and where no one is afraid to be themselves." She laid out her vision: mentorship programs for younger employees, open-door policies where anyone could share ideas, and regular workshops on teamwork and respect. Some managers looked unsure at first, but as Maria explained, they began to understand. "When people feel valued," she said, "they give their best. And when they give their best, the company grows stronger. That is how we will succeed together." Over the next few months, Maria's vision began to take shape. Employees who once competed against each other started working as a team. The manager who used to dismiss her ideas now encouraged his staff to share their thoughts openly. The group of colleagues who once mocked her lunchbox became some of the first to volunteer for new teamwork projects. Slowly but surely, the company's reputation improved. Clients noticed the positive energy, projects were delivered faster, and creativity flourished. Maria's story spread beyond the walls of the company. Other businesses in the city heard about the simple woman who had once been bullied but turned out to be the owner. They admired how she chose not to take revenge but instead used her position to bring change. Some even invited her to speak at events about leadership and respect. Maria always spoke humbly, sharing her story not to gain praise but to remind others of an important truth: never judge someone by how they look, and never underestimate the quiet strength of humility. But inside her own company, the lesson was strongest. Employees who once felt invisible now walked with confidence. Those who had once bullied others were forced to reflect and change. Many came to Maria privately to thank her. One young woman said, "I used to be afraid to come to work because I felt like I didn't fit in. But now I feel like I belong. Thank you for giving us this kind of workplace." Another employee admitted, "I was wrong about you, Maria. I judged you unfairly. But you opened my eyes, and I will never treat anyone like that again." Maria listened to these words with kindness. She forgave easily but never forgot the lessons she had learned. To her, the real victory was not in owning the company but in changing hearts. She wanted people to carry these lessons with them long after they left the office, so the world outside could also become kinder. One evening, as Maria left the office, she noticed something that made her pause. Near the parking lot, the same co-workers who once laughed at her old car now stood together admiring it. One of them said, "It's amazing how she stays so humble. She could buy the most expensive car in the city, but she chooses this one. That's real strength." Maria smiled as she got in, quietly proud that the very things they once mocked had now become symbols of respect. As the months turned into a year, the company grew stronger than ever before. Profits rose, but more importantly, so did morale. People loved coming to work, not just for the paycheck but because they felt valued. The office was no longer a place of whispers and laughter at someone else's expense. It had become a place of encouragement, kindness, and unity. Maria often walked through the building, listening to the sounds of teamwork and laughter, and thought to herself, "This is what success truly looks like." In the end, Maria's story became more than just a workplace tale. It became a lesson for life. She showed that strength does not need loud voices or fancy clothes. True strength lies in patience, humility, and the courage to stand firm in the face of disrespect. She reminded everyone that respect should not depend on wealth, position, or appearance. Respect is something every human being deserves. And so, the simple woman who was once bullied became not only the owner of the company but also the heart of it. She turned mockery into respect, silence into strength, and cruelty into compassion. Her journey taught everyone a timeless lesson: never underestimate someone just because they appear ordinary. For behind the simplest appearance may lie the greatest power, the deepest wisdom, and the kindest heart. Maria's story lived on, told again and again, not just inside her company but far beyond. It reminded people everywhere that dignity shines brighter than gold, humility is stronger than pride, and kindness will always leave the greatest mark. And as Maria looked at her company thriving under this new spirit, she knew in her heart that this was only the beginning of the legacy she wanted to leave behind.